The Great Hall of the Galactic Cooperation Council had never felt so empty. 12 species had once filled these crystal seats with hope and dreams of peace. Now only 6 remained, and their representatives sat in silence, watching the holographic display that showed their dying civilization. Ambassador Zethkar of the Veltari people stood at the center of the chamber. Her crystalline body caught the light from 1,000 stars visible through the transparent dome above. But today, her usual bright glow was dim with fear. The musical tones of her voice, normally so beautiful, now carried the weight of desperation. HFY have taken another system, she announced. Her words echoed in the vast space. Kepler 442 fell 3 days ago. 2 billion Thani people. Gone. The other ambassadors shifted in their seats. Ambassador Krix of the insectoid Zakti clicked, his mandibles nervously. The soft-furred Mimtar representative Elder Velshan wrapped her 6 arms around herself as if cold. Everyone knew what gone meant when it came to the HFY. The enemy didn't just kill, they consumed. They turned entire populations into biomass, feeding their endless hunger for expansion. Planets that had thrived for thousands of years became barren rocks in a matter of weeks. How many systems do we have left? Asked Ambassador Torvin of the aquatic Depthmar people. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. 18, Zethkar replied. Down from over 300 when this war began. 300 years. That's how long the HFY had been spreading across the galaxy like a disease. They came from the dark spaces between stars, a hive mind species that saw all other life as food. Their ships were alive, growing and adapting. Their soldiers were bioengineered monsters that could survive in any environment. The Council had tried everything. They had built massive defense platforms around key worlds. The HFY had simply grown larger ships. They had developed new weapons, energy shields, quantum barriers. The HFY had adapted to every single one. They had tried diplomacy, offering the invaders entire uninhabited systems. The HFY had taken the gifts and kept coming. What about the new plague weapon the Kordani developed? Asked Elder Velshan. Her voice was soft, but desperate. Ambassador, Zethkar's light dimmed further. The HFY adapted to it in 12 days. Their latest bioforms are now immune to all known diseases. The chamber fell silent again. Everyone knew they were watching their civilization die in slow motion. The HFY didn't rush. They took their time, harvesting each world completely. Before moving to the next, it was efficient, it was thorough, it was terrifying. There might be one option, said a voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at researcher Quintel, a young Veltari scientist who rarely spoke in these meetings. Something we haven't tried because we were afraid. Speak, commanded Zethkar. Quintel's crystalline form flickered nervously. The quarantined world, Sol 3, Earth. A wave of shocked silence filled the chamber. Then everyone began talking at once. Voices rose in a dozen different languages, all expressing the same emotion. Fear. The Deathworlders? Are you insane? We quarantined them for good reason. They're savages. Ambassador Zethkar raised her hand for silence. The chamber slowly quieted, but she could feel the fear radiating from every representative present, too. 100 years ago, the Council had discovered Earth during a routine survey mission. What they found there had horrified them. A world where everything tried to kill everything else, where the weather itself was a weapon, where the dominant species had evolved not just to survive, but to hunt and kill with terrifying efficiency. Humans were predators, real predators, not like the gentle omnivores that made up most of the Council species. They had forward-facing eyes for tracking prey. They had flat teeth for tearing meat. They sweated through their skin, which allowed them to chase their victims across vast distances until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. But worse than their physical adaptations was their minds. Humans were violent, aggressive, and cunning. They fought wars against their own species with weapons that could destroy entire cities. They had created poisons that could kill millions. They had built machines of war that turned battlefields into hellscapes. The Council had watched in horror as humans developed nuclear weapons and nearly destroyed their own world. When they began developing space travel, the Council had acted quickly. They placed a quarantine beacon around the Sol system and declared Earth off-limits to all galactic civilization. They're too dangerous, said Ambassador Krix. If we bring them into our conflict, how do we know they won't turn on us next? Because we'll all be dead if we don't try, said Quintel quietly. The Vexhai will reach the core worlds in less than 50 years. After that, it's over. Every world, every species, every trace of our civilization will be gone. Elder Velshan uncoiled one of her arms and pointed at the holographic display. Show us the latest intelligence reports from the border systems. The display changed to show the most recent battle. The Zarkun Defense Fleet, one of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy, had tried to stop a Vexhai bioship near the Proxima system. The battle had lasted 6 hours. The defense fleet had used their most powerful weapons, their best tactics, their bravest soldiers. They had destroyed exactly 0 Vexhai ships. The bioship had consumed 3 of their vessels, learning from their technology and growing stronger. The rest of the fleet had retreated, leaving the Proxima system to its fate. They adapt to everything we throw at them, said Ambassador Torvin. Our energy weapons, our missile systems, our defensive strategies. Nothing works for long. But they've never faced humans, said Quintel. They've never encountered a species that evolved on a death world, a species that thinks like a predator. The chamber fell quiet again. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. They were herbivores and omnivores, species that had evolved to avoid conflict. They thought in terms of cooperation, negotiation, peaceful solutions. Even their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy. The Vexhai were different. They were predators, like humans. But they were also a hive mind, thinking and acting as one vast organism. Maybe it would take individual predators to fight them. Maybe it would take the kind of vicious, creative thinking that only came from a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Ambassador Zethkar looked around the chamber at the faces of the last free species in the galaxy. She saw fear, desperation, and something else. Hope. Terrible, dangerous hope. If we do this, she said slowly, if we lift the quarantine and contact Earth, we can never go back. We'll be admitting that our way of thinking, our way of fighting has failed. We'll be asking for help from a species we considered too violent to join civilized society. The alternative is extinction, said Quintel. Zethkar nodded slowly. She looked up at the stars visible through the dome above. Somewhere out there, among those distant lights, the Vexhai were consuming another world, growing stronger, preparing for their next harvest, all in favor of lifting the quarantine on Sol 3 and requesting assistance from the humans. 6 hands rose in the air. 6 species representing the last remnants of galactic civilization voted to ask the monsters from Earth for help. The message was simple, transmitted on all frequencies toward the distant yellow star. We are dying. We need warriors. Will you help us survive? They sent it knowing that they might be inviting something worse than the Vexhai into their galaxy. But they also sent it knowing that without help, there would be no galaxy left to protect. Captain Sarah Chen was drinking coffee in her office aboard the orbital station New Geneva when her world changed forever. The communication alert came at 0347 hours, Earth Standard Time. At first, she thought it was another drill, or maybe a prank by one of the junior officers. Then she heard the message. The voice was strange, musical like wind chimes, but the words were clear. They were speaking perfect English, though with an odd accent that made each syllable sound like a note in a song. We are dying. We need warriors. Will you help us survive? Sarah nearly dropped her coffee mug. For 200 years, Earth had known they weren't alone in the universe. The quarantine beacon in the outer solar system had made that clear, but the aliens had never talked to them before. They had kept their distance, watching from afar, never making contact. Now they were asking for help within an hour. Sarah was in a secure video conference with President Martinez, General Harrison, and the entire Earth Defense Council. The room was filled with the most powerful people on the planet, and they all looked as shocked as Sarah felt. Play it again, ordered the president. The message repeated, that strange musical voice carrying across space and time. When it finished, the room fell silent. How do we even know this is real? Asked General Harrison. He was a big man with gray hair and suspicious eyes. Could be a test, could be a trap. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of Earth's Xenobiology department, leaned forward in her chair. The signal is coming from multiple star systems. The linguistic patterns are too complex to be fake. This is real, General. They're really out there, and they're really asking for our help. But why us? Asked President Martinez. They've been avoiding us for 2 centuries. Why contact us now? Sarah had been thinking about the same question. Maybe because we're exactly what they need. They called us warriors. Not soldiers, not peacekeepers. Warriors. The word hung in the air like smoke. Everyone in the room knew what it meant. Earth was a violent world. Humans were a violent species. They had fought wars against each other for thousands of years. They had developed weapons that could destroy entire continents. They had nearly wiped themselves out multiple times. But, in the last 100 years, they had also learned to work together. The formation of the United Earth Government had ended the age of global wars. Humans had turned their aggressive instincts outward, towards space exploration and planetary defense. What do we know about this threat they're facing? Asked President Martinez. Commander Marcus Webb, Earth's top military strategist, activated a holographic display. Based on the fragments of data we've picked up over the years, there's a hostile species called the HFY. They've been expanding across the galaxy for centuries. From what we can tell, they're a hive mind that consumes other species. Consumes how? Asked Dr. Vasquez. Literally. They break down organic matter and use it to create more of themselves. Think of them as galactic locusts, but intelligent. General Harrison stroked his chin thoughtfully. And our friendly aliens can't handle them? Apparently not. The quarantine data suggests that most galactic species are peaceful. They evolved on garden worlds, places where cooperation was more important than competition. They don't think like predators. But we do, said Sarah quietly. Everyone looked at her. She stood up and walked to the display showing Earth from orbit. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space, but Sarah knew better. Down there, in the oceans, jungles, and cities, millions of species were locked in an eternal struggle for survival. Everything ate everything else. Even the plants competed for sunlight and soil. We evolved on a death world, she said. Everything here wants to kill us. The weather, the animals, the bacteria, even some of the plants. We survived because we learned to think 3 steps ahead of everything that wanted to eat us. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. The galactic species probably think in terms of defense and cooperation, but we think in terms of attack and competition. We don't just want to survive, we want to win. President Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. What are you proposing? Sarah turned to face the room. We go and take a look. Not with a battle fleet, but with a small team. We learn about this threat, figure out what we're dealing with, and then decide how to help. And if it's a trap? Asked General Harrison. Then we spring it and see what happens, Sarah replied with a grim smile. But I don't think it is. That message. There was real fear in that voice. Desperation. Whatever they're facing, it's worse than we are. 2 days later, the small Earth, ship Defiance, left the solar system. It was the first human vessel to cross the quarantine boundary in over 2 centuries. Sarah commanded the ship, with Dr. Vasquez as the science officer, and Commander Webb as military advisor. The journey to the Veltar system took 3 weeks. When they arrived, Sarah got her first look at an alien world. Veltar Prime was beautiful, covered in crystal cities that caught and reflected the light of its blue sun. But even from orbit, she could see the signs of desperation. Defense platforms surrounded the planet like a metal shell. Refugee ships filled the space lanes. The aliens were dying, just like they had said. The first meeting took place in the council chamber that Sarah had seen in the transmission. Standing face to face with Ambassador Zethkar was like looking at a living diamond. The alien's crystalline body sparkled with inner light, and her voice really did sound like music. But her eyes, Sarah noticed, looked just like human eyes when they were afraid. Thank you for coming, Zethkar said. We were not certain you would respond to our message. We're here, Sarah replied simply. Tell us about your enemy. For the next 3 days, the humans studied everything the council could show them about the HFY. Dr. Vasquez examined preserved specimens, marveling at their biological complexity. Commander Webb analyzed battle recordings, taking notes on HFY tactics and technology. What they learned was disturbing. The HFY weren't just conquerors. They were harvesters. They had developed a form of warfare designed not to win quickly, but to extract maximum resources from their victims. They're not trying to defeat you, Webb told the assembled council on the 3rd day. They're managing your extinction, like a farmer managing livestock. The alien representatives looked confused. Elder Velshan, the soft-furred Mimtar, tilted her head. We do not understand. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. They could probably wipe you out in a few years if they wanted to, but instead, they're taking their time, consuming your world slowly. This gives them time to study your technology, adapt to your weapons, and learn from your tactics. By the time they're done, they'll be immune to everything you can throw at them. But that also means they've never faced anything like us, Sarah added. They've adapted to fight peaceful species. They've never encountered predators from a death world. Ambassador Zethkar's light flickered with what might have been hope. Will you help us fight them? Sarah looked at her companions, then back at the assembled aliens. These beings had quarantined Earth because they thought humans were too violent for civilized society. Now they were begging those same humans to save them. We'll help, she said, but not the way you think. We're not going to fight alongside your fleets or defend your worlds. We're going to handle this our way. What do you mean? Asked Zethkar. Commander Webb answered, his voice cold and professional. We're going to exterminate them. The chamber fell silent. Sarah could see the shock and fear in the aliens' faces. They had asked for warriors, but they were getting something else entirely. They were getting humans. We'll send word back to Earth, Sarah continued. You should keep your fleets away from the combat zones. This is going to get ugly, and you don't want to be anywhere near us when we're hunting. As the human ship prepared to leave Veltar Prime, Ambassador Zethkar sent one final message. What should we tell our people? How do we prepare them for what's coming? Sarah's reply was simple. Tell them that the predators from Earth are going to war, and tell them to stay out of our way. The Defiance jumped to hyperspace, carrying word back to Earth that humanity had a new enemy to hunt. Behind them, the Council species huddled in their crystal cities and tried not to think about what they had just unleashed upon the galaxy. The Terran warfleet emerged from hyperspace like a pack of hungry wolves. 60 ships materialized in the void, their angular hulls bristling with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Unlike the smooth, elegant vessels of the Council species, these ships looked like what they were, instruments of destruction built by a species that had learned warfare in the cradles of their evolution. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching the tactical displays update with enemy positions. 3 months had passed since her return to Earth. 3 months of frantic preparation, ship construction, and strategic planning. The Council had begged them to hurry, but Sarah had insisted on taking the time to do this right. Now facing the Vexi staging world of Proxima Centauri C, she was glad they had waited. Sensor report, she ordered. Lieutenant Commander Torres bent over her console, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the displays. 47 Vexi bioships in orbit around the planet. Sizes range from frigate class to that monster. She pointed to the largest contact on the screen. That one's 15 kilometers long. Sarah nodded. Intelligence had been right. The Vexi didn't build their ships. They grew them. Living vessels with organic hulls that could repair themselves and adapt to damage. The aliens had told her that some Vexi ships had been fighting for over a century, growing larger and more dangerous with each battle. What about the planet? Completely converted. The entire surface is covered with biorefineries. They're processing organic matter from at least 6 different worlds down there. Sarah felt a cold anger settle in her chest. 6 worlds. Billions. Of lives reduced to raw material for the Vexi war machine. The Council species had shown her recordings of what happened when the Vexi took a world. The screaming never stopped until the very end. Communications, open a channel to all ships. Channel open, Admiral. Sarah keyed her microphone. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. These were Earth's best, volunteers who had trained for this moment their entire careers. They were about to fight humanity's first interstellar war, and Sarah could see the controlled excitement in their eyes. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We are about to show the galaxy how humans fight wars. The enemy before us has consumed entire civilizations. They think they're the apex predators of this galaxy. Today we prove them wrong. She paused, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council species were huddled in their cities, waiting to see if the humans could succeed where they had failed. They were about to learn that evolution on a death world produced a very different kind of warrior. Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're not here to minimize casualties or preserve infrastructure. We're here to exterminate a threat to every living thing in this galaxy. Launch Phase 1. The first wave wasn't ships or missiles. It was something the Vexi had never seen before. Weaponized evolution. 30 pods launched from the human fleet, each one containing a carefully engineered biological weapon. Not a plague or poison, but something far more insidious. The pods, scattered across Proxima Centauri C's upper atmosphere, releasing their contents into the global biosphere. Dr. Vasquez had designed the weapon during the 3-month preparation period. She had studied the HFY biosamples, learning how their organic technology functioned. Then she had created the perfect predator, a synthetic organism designed to hunt and kill HFY bioforms. The weapon was beautiful in its simplicity. It attacked the quantum resonance patterns that allowed HFY organisms to communicate with the hive mind. Within hours of exposure, HFY bioforms would lose their connection to the collective consciousness and begin attacking each other and the planet below. The first effects became visible within minutes. The orderly processing facilities began to malfunction. Bioships in the lower atmosphere started firing on each other. The HFY hive mind felt the disruption like a scream of static. Planetside facilities showing massive system failures, reported Torres. The bioships are breaking formation. Sarah smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Phase 2. All ships, weapons free. Target the larger vessels first. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that had been developed in secret over the past century. Railguns that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Plasma cannons that could melt through a kilometer of armor. Quantum torpedoes that collapsed matter at the subatomic level. But the most terrifying weapon was the one mounted on Sarah's flagship. The Retribution carried humanity's first successful attempt at weaponizing a micro-black hole. When it fired, space itself seemed to scream. The beam struck the 15-kilometer bioship amidships, and for a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then reality twisted, and a sphere of absolute darkness appeared in the vessel's hull. The black hole lasted only microseconds, but it was enough. The massive ship folded in on itself like paper, disappearing into a point of infinite density before exploding outward in a burst of X-rays and gamma radiation. The remaining HFY ships tried to respond, but their adaptive capabilities were overwhelmed. They had evolved to face energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and conventional explosives. They had never encountered weapons that attacked the fundamental forces of physics. One by one, the bioships died. Some tried to flee, but the human ships were faster. Earth's vessels had been designed by a species that understood pursuit predation at the genetic level. Nothing escaped. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Proxima Centauri C system was silent except for the expanding clouds of debris that had once been living ships. But Sarah wasn't finished. Communications, broadcast this message on all HFY frequencies, she ordered. Ready, Admiral? Sarah looked directly into the camera, her eyes as cold as the space between stars. She knew that somewhere in the galaxy, the HFY Queen Mind was watching. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have been harvesting species across this galaxy for centuries, treating them like livestock. That ends now. We are coming for you. Every world you have taken, every life you have consumed, every ship in your fleet, we will burn it all. You wanted to meet an apex predator? Congratulations. Now you know what it feels like to be prey. The message was broadcast across hyperspace, reaching every HFY outpost in the galaxy within hours. For the first time in its billion-year existence, the Queen Mind felt something it had never experienced before. Fear. The humans had done the impossible. They had not just defeated a HFY fleet, they had annihilated it without losing a single ship. Their weapons defied every tactical model the hive mind had developed over centuries of conquest. But worse than their technology was their attitude. The Council species fought defensively, trying to preserve life and minimize damage. The humans fought like what they were, evolved killers from a world where only the most vicious survived. As the human fleet prepared to jump to their next target, long-range sensors detected something that made Sarah's blood run cold. A massive bioship was heading toward the Sol system. The Queen Mind was responding to humanity's challenge by attacking Earth directly. Sarah smiled again, and this time it was even less pleasant than before. Change of plans, she announced to her fleet. The enemy wants to see how we defend our home. Let's show them. The Terran fleet turned toward Earth, racing to defend their homeworld. Behind them, Proxima Centauri C burned with radioactive fire, serving as a warning to the galaxy. The humans had entered the war, and they fought like nothing the universe had ever seen. In the council chambers on Veltar Prime, Ambassador Zethkar watched the tactical reports with growing horror and amazement. The humans hadn't just won their first battle, they had committed perfect genocide. Not a single HFY organism in the entire system had survived. What have we done? She whispered to herself. What have we unleashed? But even as she asked the question, she felt a terrible hope growing in her crystalline heart. For the first time in 3 centuries, someone was winning against the Vex-HFY. The predators from Earth were hunting. The Vex-HFY bioship Eternal Hunger was a masterpiece of organic engineering, 5 kilometers long and bred for a single purpose: the complete consumption of entire worlds. It had devoured 47 planets during its 300-year existence, each conquest making it larger and more dangerous. Now it was approaching the Sol system, carrying within its living hull the genetic patterns of every species it had ever consumed. The Queen Mind had sent it to Earth with simple instructions. Learn what made these humans so dangerous, then add their biological distinctiveness to the collective. As the massive vessel dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, automated sensors throughout the system began screaming warnings. But the humans were ready. Admiral Chen watched from the command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains as the alien ship appeared on the tactical displays. She had beaten the bioship home by 6 hours, just enough time to activate Earth's hidden defenses. Distance to target? She asked. 4 billion kilometers in closing, replied Colonel Martinez, Earth's defense coordinator. Speed is approximately 0.01 c. At current velocity, it will reach Earth orbit in 14 minutes. Sarah nodded. The bioship was fast, but not nearly fast enough. Activate the grid. Across the solar system, structures that had been hidden for over a century began to emerge from their concealment. Asteroid mining stations revealed themselves to be massive weapons platforms. Deep space monitoring satellites unfolded arrays of particle beam cannons. Most terrifyingly, the moon itself split open like a flower, revealing the barrel of a weapon, so large it had required gutting the satellite's core to build it. Grid activation complete, reported Martinez. All weapons online and tracking target. The Vex-HFY ship continued its approach, apparently unaware that it was flying into the most heavily fortified system in the galaxy. The bioship's sensors detected the defensive platforms, but the Queen Mind was confident. It had faced planetary defenses before. No static fortification could stand against a ship that had survived 3 centuries of warfare. The Queen Mind was wrong. Fire, ordered Sarah. The moon cannon fired first. A beam of pure energy powered by fusion reactors buried in the lunar core reached across space at the speed of light. The bioship's adaptive armor began to shift, preparing to absorb and deflect the energy as it had done thousands of times before. The beam punched through the armor like it was paper and carved a hole straight through the ship's center mass. Before the Queen Mind could even process what had happened, the asteroid platforms opened fire. Hundreds of particle beams converged on the wounded bioship, each one carrying enough energy to boil an ocean. The vessel's organic hull began to vaporize, its living components screaming in frequencies that human instruments couldn't detect. The ship tried to adapt, growing new armor plating and redistributing its mass to avoid the targeting systems. But the humans had designed their weapons specifically to prevent adaptation. The beams shifted frequency and intensity every microsecond, never allowing the organic matter to find a stable configuration. Eternal Hunger lasted exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds. When the barrage ended, there was nothing left but expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The most successful bioship in Vex-HFY history had been reduced to component atoms. In her hive, deep in the Andromeda spiral arm, the Queen Mind experienced something no Vex-HFY consciousness had ever felt: the death scream of an immortal vessel. The psychic shock rippled through the collective, causing drone ships across the galaxy to momentarily lose coordination. Status report, Sarah commanded. Target completely destroyed, Martinez replied, his voice filled with satisfaction. No, debris larger than a molecule detected. The grid performed perfectly. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Earth's defenses had been built in secret over the past century, hidden from the Council's surveillance by careful placement in asteroid fields and on the far side of planetary bodies. Every human in the system had known they were living inside, a trap designed to kill gods. Today they had proven it worked. But the war was far from over. Intelligence reports showed that the Vex-HFY were adapting to human tactics with frightening speed. They had begun growing new types of bioships, ones specifically designed to counter human weapons. The Queen Mind was learning. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Torres from her communication station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Kepler 442 system." Sarah frowned. Kepler 442 had been consumed by the Vex-HFY months ago. There shouldn't be anyone left alive to send transmissions. Put it through. The holographic display activated, showing a scene of horror that made even veteran soldiers step back. The transmission was coming from inside a HFY processing facility, a vast organic structure that covered half a continent. In the foreground stood a creature that had once been council species, probably Thani based on the bone structure, but had been changed into something else. The thing spoke in a voice that belonged to the Queen Mind. Impressive, humans of Earth. We had not expected such effective defenses, but you have made an error in revealing your capabilities. We will adapt. The creature's body began to shift and change as Sarah watched. Its skin hardened into something that looked like metallic scales. Its eyes multiplied and spread across its skull. Its limbs elongated and sprouted additional joints. Observe, the Queen Mind continued through its puppet. We are already growing countermeasures to your particle beam weapons. In time we will adapt to all your technologies, and then we will come for your precious Earth again. The transmission showed hundreds of similar creatures in the background, all of them changing, all of them adapting. The HFY were using the genetic patterns of conquered species to evolve new defenses in real time. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The enemy was more dangerous than they had realized. End transmission, she ordered. The hologram disappeared, leaving the command center in tense silence. Around her, officers exchanged worried glances. They had won the battle, but the Queen Mind's message was clear. This was far from over. Colonel Martinez, Sarah said quietly. I need you to send a classified message to the research divisions. Tell them we need new weapons, something the HFY have never seen before. What kind of weapons, Admiral? Sarah looked up at the tactical display showing Earth's solar system. Her home, her species' birth world, the place where humanity had evolved from small mammals hiding in caves to the dominant predators of an entire planet. The kind that don't leave anything to adapt to, she replied. Tell them we need weapons that rewrite the laws of physics. Tell them we need to be able to kill at the quantum level, and tell them they have 6 months to make it happen. As Martinez hurried away to send the message, Sarah remained staring at the display. The war with the HFY was escalating beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Both sides were pushing the boundaries of what was possible, developing weapons and tactics that defied conventional understanding. But Sarah had one advantage the Queen Mind didn't understand. Humans had been fighting wars against impossible odds since they first picked up rocks and decided to hunt animals 10 times their size. They didn't just adapt to threats, they eliminated them. The message that went out to Earth's research facilities that day was simple. Build weapons that can kill gods. Make them afraid to exist in the same universe as us. Within hours, laboratories across Earth were working on projects that would have horrified the peaceful council species. Weapons that collapsed the strong nuclear force. Devices that could unravel the quantum foam that held reality together. Machines that turned the expansion of space itself into a weapon. The humans were about to show the galaxy what a Deathworld species could accomplish when they decided something needed to die. In her distant hive, the Queen Mind felt a strange, new sensation, uncertainty. For the first time in billions of years of existence, she was facing an enemy that scared her. The humans didn't just fight to survive, they fought to ensure their enemies couldn't exist. The war was about to enter, a phase that would determine not just the fate of the galaxy, but the fundamental nature of reality itself. The final battle began not with ships or weapons, but with mathematics. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before the assembled War Council in the depths of Earth's military headquarters, her presentation displaying equations that made reality itself seem fragile. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the HFY bioship in Earth's solar system, and humanity had used every moment to prepare for what was coming. We call it the entropy cascade, she explained to the room full of Earth's top military leaders. The weapon doesn't just destroy matter, it fundamentally alters the quantum structure of space-time in a localized area. Anything caught in the field doesn't just die, it stops having ever existed. Admiral Chen studied the data with growing unease. She had asked for weapons that could kill gods, and her scientists had delivered something that could unmake them, from history itself. What's the range, she asked. Variable. We can tune it from a single ship to an entire solar system. The larger the field, the more energy it requires, but the effect is the same. Complete ontological collapse. General Harrison, who had aged 10 years during the war, looked up from his tablet. Any chance of this thing backfiring? Accidentally erasing us instead of them? Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. There are risks. We're manipulating forces that we don't fully understand. But the alternative is letting the HFY spread across the galaxy forever. Through the reinforced windows of the command center, Sarah could see the Terran fleet preparing for departure. 200 ships now, all equipped with weapons that violated several fundamental laws of physics. The largest vessels carried the entropy cascade devices, weapons so dangerous that their very existence was classified beyond top secret. "Intelligence report?" she asked. Colonel Martinez activated the holographic display. "Long-range sensors have located the HFY home cluster. 7 star systems connected by massive biostructures. Best estimate is that 90% of their total population is concentrated there." The display showed a region of space that looked like a cancer growing between the stars. Organic structures thousands of kilometers long connected planet to planet, creating a vast network of living matter that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. "How many?" Sarah asked quietly. "Conservative estimate? Trillions of individual organisms. Possibly quadrillions. It's difficult to tell where one creature ends and another begins." Sarah nodded grimly. The Queen Mind had been preparing for this confrontation just as humanity had. Intelligence suggested that the HFY had been pulling back their forces, concentrating their entire species in this one location for a final battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Torres. "Incoming transmission from the council chambers on Veltar Prime." "Put it through." Ambassador Zethkar appeared in the hologram, her crystalline form dim with exhaustion. The war had taken its toll on all the surviving species, but especially on the council leadership who carried the weight of billions of lives on their shoulders. "Admiral Chen," she said, her musical voice strained. "Our long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures from the HFY home cluster. Something is happening there." Sarah exchanged glances with her staff. "What kind of energy signatures?" "Unlike anything we've ever seen. The quantum resonance patterns suggest they're preparing some kind of weapon. Our scientists believe they may be attempting to weaponize the gravitational fields of their entire star cluster." The room fell silent. If the HFY could turn gravity itself into a weapon, they could potentially destroy entire sectors of the galaxy. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. "Weeks. Perhaps days. Admiral, whatever you're planning, it must happen now." Sarah nodded. "Understood." Admiral Chen out. The transmission ended, leaving the War Council alone with their terrible decision. They could wait and hope to develop better defenses, but time had run out. The entropy cascade weapons were untested on this scale, dangerous beyond calculation, and their only hope. "All department heads prepare for immediate deployment," Sarah ordered. "We're going to end this war today." 2 hours later, the entire Terran fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for the HFY home cluster. It was the largest military force Earth had ever assembled, carrying weapons that could rewrite the fundamental laws of reality. As the ships traveled through the twisted space between dimensions, Sarah found herself thinking about the message that had started this war. The council species had asked for warriors, but they had gotten something far more dangerous. They had gotten a species that didn't just fight to win, they fought to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone ever again. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the HFY home cluster, and Sarah got her first look at the enemy's true power. The 7 star systems had been completely transformed into a single living organism. Planets had been connected by biostructures that pulsed with dark energy. Stars themselves had been partially encased in organic matter, their nuclear fires, feeding the vast creature that the Queen Mind had become. "My God," whispered Dr. Vasquez. "It's beautiful." It was, and it was the most terrifying thing Sarah had ever seen. "All ships, assume attack formation," she ordered. "Prepare entropy cascade weapons for simultaneous deployment." Across the fleet, weapons that should not have existed powered up. Space around the human ships began to shimmer as the devices warped reality in preparation for firing. The Queen Mind's response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire cluster came alive with defensive fire. Bioships the size of moons launched from planetary surfaces. Energy beams that could crack continents reached across space. The very stars began to flicker as their power was channeled into weapons. But the humans had learned from every previous battle. Their ships scattered in complex patterns using advanced tactics that no other species had ever developed. They fought not as individuals but as a unified pack, coordinating their movements with the precision of a school of predatory fish. The battle raged for hours. Human ships died in bursts of light, their crews sacrificing themselves to get the larger vessels into position. Vex-High bioships fell to weapons that turned their adaptive armor into a liability, each adaptation making them more vulnerable to the next attack. Finally, the moment came. "All entropy cascade weapons in position," reported Colonel Martinez. Sarah looked around the bridge at her surviving crew. Young faces, all of them, trained from birth to serve humanity in its darkest hour. They were about to commit an act that would echo through cosmic history. "Fire," she ordered. 7 weapons fired simultaneously, each one targeting a different star system in the Vex-High cluster. The effect was immediate and absolute. Reality screamed. Space itself began to unravel around the target zones. The exotic matter that held atoms together stopped functioning. The quantum fields that allowed particles to exist collapsed. In 7 expanding spheres of absolute nothingness, the Vex-High home cluster began to disappear. Not destroyed, not killed, erased. Deleted from the fundamental structure of the universe, as if it had never existed at all. The Queen Mind's final transmission reached every corner of the galaxy. The prey became the predator. "What have you done?" Then silence. Eternal, complete silence from the region of space that had once contained trillions of lives. When the Terran fleet returned to Council space, they were met not with celebration, but with something approaching religious awe. The surviving human ships landed at Veltar Prime, where representatives of every surviving species waited to greet them. Admiral Chen walked down the ramp of her flagship, still wearing her battle-stained uniform. Ambassador Zethkar approached her, the crystalline being's light flickering with complex emotions. "Is it over?" she asked. Sarah nodded. "The Vex-High are gone. Not just dead, they never existed. We've erased them from the quantum structure of reality itself. They can't come back, they can't evolve, they can't adapt, they're simply not." The gathered aliens exchanged glances filled with horror and gratitude. They had been saved, but they had also witnessed something that changed their understanding of what was possible in a universe where humans existed. "What happens now?" asked Elder Velshan of the Mimtar. Sarah looked around at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Peaceful species who had evolved on garden worlds, who thought in terms of cooperation and mutual benefit. Species who would never have developed weapons that could unmake reality itself. "Now we go home," she said simply. "Earth will restore the quarantine. We'll stay in our system and you'll stay in yours. The galaxy is safe from the Vex-High, but it's also safe from us." Ambassador Zethkar's form brightened slightly. "But surely, after what you've done for us, you could join the Council. You could help us build a better galaxy." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Ambassador, let me ask you something. When you look at me, what do you see?" "I see the being who saved our civilization." "Look closer." Zethkar studied Sarah's face, taking in the predator's eyes, the hunter's stance, the casual way she carried herself despite having just committed genocide on a cosmic scale. "I see," she began, then stopped. "You see a killer?" Sarah finished. "You see something that evolved to hunt and destroy anything it perceives as a threat. Today we were your saviors. Tomorrow, if we disagreed about something important, we might be your executioners."